All right, let's do a quick Bitcoin and cryptocurrency market update for today, Tuesday, September the 21st. And Bitcoin and cryptocurrency markets are on a bit of a downslide. Can we look for any kind of a pump anytime soon? And what can we expect and when? So let's dig right in and take a look at it. Like we talked about yesterday, one of the biggest considerations that we have on the table right now with Bitcoin, as you can see, it's been down pretty good here the last couple of days, is traditional markets. Traditional markets are in a bit of a pickle right now. We have Fed Chairman Powell that is going to be talking this week to try to calm markets. One of the things is they know they have to start the taper. They have to pare back their asset purchasing program, buying bonds, treasury bonds, mortgage-backed securities, things like that. And that's what's keeping treasuries low. That's what keeping interest rates artificially low for real estate and for commercial debt markets and credit markets. So they're going to start talking about how they're going to start the taper. So a little bit of that is, that's what a little bit of what's going on right now with the sell-off. A lot of that's getting priced in, the taper and the interest rate hike that is coming. I think they're going to have to do a lot of it sooner than they're saying they're going to have to, due to inflation and other systemic issues underlying the economy out there right now that a lot of people are not talking about. Of course, the China situation with Evergrande is also something that's weighing on the markets. That's a $300 billion issue out there, which isn't huge in the whole scheme of things, but it's enough to upset some credit markets and things like that in China. It's also risk off in China. So a lot of the money when the Chinese, when the markets in China open up tomorrow, they're on holiday today. It'll be interesting to see how that works and then what China's response is going to be to that crisis and how they handle it. But keep an eye on traditional markets, as you have seen lately. Whenever the traditional markets are down, they're basically flat today, but whenever they are down and whenever they sell off, that affects in the crypto markets, Bitcoin and crypto markets, a magnitude of 2x usually. At what you're seeing in the traditional markets. We only were down like 2% in traditional markets yesterday across the board. At one point, a little bit over 2%. They ended up closing about 1.5% down. Crypto markets were 10, 15, 20% down on certain assets, depending on which assets, and they're still bleeding today. But let's take a look at Bitcoin, and we're hovering around 41.2 right now. And Ethereum is down to about 2,800. So the critical levels to watch is the $40,000 level in Bitcoin. And why is that important? And are we going to get there? I think we're going to definitely test 40,000. And that is the level, if you remember, back in after the initial sell-off back in May, that was that $40,000 level that Bitcoin could not get above. And it was in that initially after the first sell-off, we were in that 36 to 40,000 range, and then it dropped down 34 to 37, then it dropped down 34 to 35, maybe pushing 39. It popped up to 40, breached it just a little bit, and then dropped right back down. And then we were in that 30 to 35 range, and then it kind of dropped down to the bottom where we were chasing or wicked down to 29,000. And if the institutions in Wales didn't step in right there, who knows how far down that would have gone. The good news is that will probably potentially be the bottom this time. I don't see that bottom being breached this time just because there is so much institutional involvement right now. The whales and the miners don't want to see the price go below there. And but we very well could revisit that if we break this 40,000 level. So 40,000 is the critical level where if Bitcoin goes below 40,000, and we haven't breached it yet, even wicking down to just above 40,000, like 40,100. If we break down below that and start moving lower, it's going to go down and test these lower levels. First stop is going to be right here at that $38,000 level, $39,000 level. And then once we start rolling back down, you've got the 35,000 level. And then your last line of defense is 29,000. So that's what's on the horizon for Bitcoin. Ethereum leads the altcoin market in general. There's been a few outliers that have been doing their own thing. There's a lot of calls for Ethereum to hit back down to 2,000 again. And of course, the bottom on Ethereum was 1,700. So that $2,000 level, again, is after the initial sell-off. Ethereum was kind of bouncing around anywhere between, it looks like the low around 2000, and it was popping up to about 2800. And then that level tightened up 26 to 28. Then it dropped down 23 to 26. And then it dropped all the way down to 1800 to 2000. And then of course we broke all the way down to the lows of about $1,700. So $2,000 is the number everybody's watching for Ethereum. If Ethereum breaks below $2,000, then that one could go back down to test these lows again. Now, one thing that's interesting on the Bitcoin price, a couple things, is the hash ribbons indicator. So we've looked at that in the past, and the blue buy signal and the hash ribbons indicator is typically indicated that the bear market is over and it's a good time to buy, and you're into the bull market trend. And generally, once you print that blue buy signal, the prior daily low prior to that blue buy signal has generally been the low that you will see moving forward, and you never break below that low, except for one time in history, and that was the March 2020 pandemic. So that was a black swan. I don't really count that in terms of charting and things like that, because that was an isolated black swan incident, but it did break down March of 2020. We had a hash ribbons buy indicator right here afterwards, and that was at the $6,000 level. We have not breached that $6,000 level since that. We printed another one here in July of 2020. That was around $8,000, $9,000. Bitcoin did not go back below that, still has not. But prior to the March 2020 collapse and sell-off, there was a blue buy signal printed on December 27, 2019. The prior daily low was $6,500. As you can see, Bitcoin went down to 3,800 as a low on that 13th of March 2020. The low was 3,800. So it did violate that technical indicator right there and breach that prior daily low. Prior to that, the last blue buy signal was printed on January 11th, 2019, and that was 3,400. So even that signal was almost violated. It came very, very close. So the notion that once you've printed the blue buy signal, the hash ribbon buy signal on the hash ribbon indicator, the blue buy signal, the notion that you will never break that prior daily low, the daily low prior to that signal printing, that you will not revisit that or break it, does not hold true in black swan events. And what is your black swan event? The stock markets. And we are looking, all of the technical indicators are pointing towards 20, 25% correction in the stock markets, maybe 30%, depending on how far the Fed lets it go, depending on what Powell says on Wednesday and when the taper really starts. And a lot of it is going to hinge on what China says and does tomorrow. And remember, if we sell off 20 to 30% in traditional markets, you're going to see 2 to 3 times that in Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency markets at large. So that's your black swan event that's on the horizon, one of them that can potentially create a black swan sell-off like we saw in 2020 for Bitcoin. So where is the good news, and can we potentially see a pump? So let's get back to the moon, and let's talk about the moon phase and see what the moon has to say about that. So I've got these bad moons, the red blood moons. Those are the ones that we have the sell-offs whenever you get a new moon. And my AirPods keep trying to connect for some reason. I don't even have them plugged in. And on the for the pump moons, you got the full moon. So those are the white moons at the bottom. So we are printing a full moon here any day now. And as you can see on these full moons, especially in the worst parts, weaker parts of the downtrending market, this is an uptrend within an overall downtrend. And remember, we've been in a downtrend since, basically May of 2021. The market has been downtrending, macro downtrend. We have a local downtrend within a macro uptrending Bitcoin market from the history of Bitcoin. Of course, it's been up ever since the beginning with ups and downs. So we'll call a macro uptrend. So we have a local downtrend in this market cycle right now, and then we have a macro downtrend So you can see the full moon, pump moons, the red blood dump moons. It's not a blood moon, but it's just new moon. I just put it in red because it's mean and it makes the market dump. Now, I don't, obviously, correlation is not causation. The moons aren't making the market dump, but it's just interesting the timing that you look at. So we do have a pump moon coming. And as you can see, when we've been in downtrends and we've had full pump moons and downtrends, they were all little pumps, 5 or 10% for Bitcoin, 4,000 to $6,000 or $8,000. Except this one here that gave us the big pump from the bottom. That's when that came in. So we've got one that's going to show up here. So we could expect, depending on what's going on with China tomorrow and things like that, possibly a little bounce here. The question is how much and how far. Could it be a full-on reversal, or will it be a little bounce? And right now, let's turn the moons off. As far as what we're looking at from a technical standpoint, we have a high, and then we put in, lower highs and lower lows. So we'll see how this prints out. But right now, from a technical standpoint, this uptrend has been reversed. And what you need to look for and what you need to expect is continuation to the downside, testing that $40,000 range. We're down there right now, 40,800 since we've been doing this. Testing that range to see if it holds 40,000 even, to see if we break that 40,000 range. So you have to expect that to be tested. All of the altcoins are starting to test lows within this trend. Now, here's something that's interesting to look at. And a lot of people have been discussing this Wyckoff schematic. And when you look at Wyckoff distribution, accumulation and distribution, we've talked about it before. Your accumulation was back here. This is your markup phase, distribution across the top, markdown into this little phase here with further markdown. So this was more distribution here, all the way down. Now, some of this could possibly have been, if this was all distribution, in order to pump again, you've got to have an accumulation phase. So this could have been accumulation, or this could have been more distribution. And once this plays out, we'll understand a little bit more about what this is. But this could have been a little bit of accumulation where you mark up phase again, then you distribute across the bar, across the top, and bring it back down into that Wyckoff distribution schematic. But what's interesting is this little price action here looks exactly like the large price action there, where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, dump, bounce, dump. And right now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, dump, bounce, dump. So the question is, where is that going to bottom out at? How far is it going to go? And where are we going to go from here? The other thing that's interesting is to look at the hourly price action in the local area that we're in right now of this downtrend, and it looks a lot like the daily before the final dump. And you can see what we did here, where we had a couple little peaks here, rounded over the top, we came down, we had a bounce, a little bit of a sideways accumulation, distribution, whatever you want to call it, a little bit of sideways action, then a dump, a couple little bounces there, came up, and then we had that dump, and now we're dumping again. So this looks very much like the daily price action to about this point right here, where it's kind of bumped down. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and where this ends up going. And you can see that the rest of the coins are all kind of doing the same thing. The other thing on the moon phase that's really interesting, and again, I don't use this for anything other than entertainment. I just think it's interesting and kind of fun to watch. It works on, and it has worked on other assets as well. This is Cardano, and you can put this moon phase on any of the assets. Here's Ethereum, and you can see your pump moons and your dump moons, that they're pretty, they coincide pretty much with the bumps, the pumps and the dumps on a lot of different assets. So that's an interesting thing to look at, a lot of fun to watch. So just to kind of sum it up, that's what you need to look for, that $40,000 level. If you break that, you need to expect continuation to the downside and start testing that low to mid $30,000 range. And then, of course, your last line of defense is $29,000. Doesn't seem like it will get to that point. It seems like this little range right here, this $35,000 range, is probably going to hold, because that was the tough range there before the final shakeout. And I think this was market price discovery here, trying to figure out the bottom. Once that was let go, it started drifting down and it was brought back up. So if it does get back down to this level, the institutions and the whales are not going to let it go below 29,000. I don't believe. That's my opinion. That's what I'm seeing in the charts. Those are the things that I'm watching out for and looking out for, and what I think you need to be watching out for as well. So keep an eye on traditional markets. Keep an eye on what China does tomorrow. Tomorrow's Wednesday. Powell's also going to come out tomorrow, and I think his statements and indications are going to be largely um, influenced by what China ends up doing, because China actually tonight for Eastern Standard, United States time frames, Pacific and Eastern Standard, will be daytime in China. So we're going to know real soon, about 9:30 p.m. EST, when their markets open, what that's going to look like. They'll start making statements in terms of how they're going to handle, potentially we might see some statements from the Chinese government, how they're going to handle this situation and what they're going to do. Powell's remarks may be influenced by that, depending on how bad that is. And if there's any systemic outreach and overflow from that event into our traditional markets, which then bleed over into the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency markets, because again, it's risk on. This is a risk asset. These assets are risk assets. We are in a risk on environment right now because of the Fed, quantitative easing, low interest rates. They're pushing investors into risk assets. So until that environment changes, you're going to see a lot of volatility in Bitcoin and the crypto market. So we are in a bit of a price discovery here. We're trying to shake out where we're going to land so that we can be onward and upward from there. The other thing, and we'll talk about that in the next video, is whether or not we can even see a bear market and how deep a bear market could be if we do see another peak and another parabolic move after this last little shakeout that we're potentially in right now, and where and when that bottom comes in. So we'll talk about that on the next video, and I will see you soon.